Welcome back. You tuned into Mid Morning with Mariam Mia. And yes, we're in the afternoon segment now. We just a good afternoon to everybody. And yes, from one dynamic female to another world winning human potential in parenting, expert, not speaker, but to me, she's an expert, a guru, Nikki Bush. And we're going to be, she's just launched a new book, which is Future Proof Your Life. And we're going to be speaking to about, sorry, my apologies, future proof yourself and how to win at work in life. And we're going to be chatting to her because for me, Nikki is an encyclopedia of information just for ourselves at work in terms of ourselves as a parent and also as a spouse. And she herself has, which I'm going to ask her to speak about, undergone life-changing dimensions. Her life in 2017 had taken a trajectory, and she had to look in terms of her own life and where does she go from here, as well as her family dynamic had changed forever. And then COVID came, and then everybody's life journey had taken an alternate course. And yes, so that is why I think this is an essential book, an essential reading in terms of how do we go forward from here and how do we future proof ourselves if we are to move forward in these uncertain times of adaptation. So let's welcome Nikki to the program. Good afternoon, Nikki, and welcome to Mid Morning Talk on Salam Media.
Hello, Mariam. Lovely to be with you.
Thanks so much, and congratulations firstly on your book. I attended your book launch, and wow, I miss those days where we could have those book launches and just those conversations with the author in conversation. So although we weren't there physically and could connect and have all the goodies thereafter that's synonymous with book clubs and book launches, indeed, it was good to connect with you, connect with Jenny Chris Williams, and just speak to you about the reason for your book, as well as when, I mean, there were so many things you've mentioned there. I made a whole list while listening to it. So we're going to go through it. Yes, I was a good student. I felt like I was back doing in the lecture halls of University of Witwatersrand. So I was there, a good student, and I wasn't using my phone the old-fashioned way as well. So that, but I want to go first. I read your Facebook there that you'd written something on the 28th of August, and I love that analogy. I mean, it was first time that somebody used that analogy about the mystery box of a master chef mystery box. Or for me, I'm a chop fan. It's half an hour series, so it's easier to watch. But the mystery box is in there as well. And that's what you said. Sometimes life gives you that mystery box. These are your constraints. These are your challenges, and this is what you have to work with. And you need to create a masterpiece from there. So take the constraints, see life as a challenge, and don't only make it work, but excel and take a new pathway, create a new pathway. So yes, tell us a little bit. First, I'd like to, if you're comfortable, to just digress a bit and tell us your whole life. As you say, it was 6 minutes that your life changed before you. I mean, you were separated by a door and you didn't know what was happening in that 6 minute just behind. So there was only that the door was your physical barrier, and thereafter your life took a different course altogether. So if you can just share us, I know it's difficult, but we'd appreciate if you could share what had happened to you in 2017.
Thanks, Mariam. So life does not unfold in a straight line, not for you, not for me, not for anybody. And sometimes life sends us life tremors, little warnings, and sometimes you are sent a life quake. And at the end of 2017, we were sent a life quake in the form of 2 armed intruders who entered our home. And I locked myself away in the bathroom with my cell phone and made emergency calls while my husband faced these intruders. And right now we are in the swirling mists of the unknown of COVID as it plays out. And in that particular instance, I had locked myself behind a solid Meranti wooden door, and I had absolutely no idea how many people were on our property, whether they were armed or not, because I hadn't heard a shot. I didn't know what was happening to my husband. I didn't know what was happening to my 18-year-old son. And it was only, and of course, there's a lot that happened, and I won't take you into all the gory details, but it was only when I opened the door eventually, after they tried to kick the door down a number of times to get to me, once my neighbor screamed over the door that they had left the property, that I actually opened the door, not knowing what I would find. And my husband had taken a single shot to the heart, and in 6 very short minutes, because that's what it took from the time they entered our property to the time they left, our life was changed forever, and time was divided into 2 parts, before this and after this, and nothing would ever be the same again. And so while the book was not inspired by that particular instance, it was inspired by COVID. I had written a white paper called "The Realities of Working from Home with Kids" in April last year, and it went viral. And I've done a lot of work with organizations over the past 18 months, wearing my 3 very clear hats: human potential expert, parenting expert, somebody who's built a brand and a business from home for 25 years with kids at various ages and stages. And of course, as a widow, I have walked the path of trauma, loss, and grief. And so I'm very much, on the page and empathetic to how people are feeling right now through the global pandemic, because whether you have lost somebody close to you, a friend or a relative or a colleague, or whether you have had this feeling of loss of control, and I think that would apply to absolutely everybody, because life has changed. The way we live, the way we work, the way we raise our children, the way our children go to school, all of that, the fundamentals of our lives have changed. And so when I started looking at this new kind of world and the unfolding of COVID, I started pulling in the threads of what had happened to me after I'd lost my husband, and how it didn't matter how much I wanted to unwidow myself, I couldn't. Just as we cannot uncovid ourselves, we cannot undo the civil unrest that happened a few weeks ago. And so we go back to that MasterChef Mystery Box Challenge. And we have to look at the fact that sometimes life just gives us a bunch of ingredients that we didn't ask for, we didn't invite in, like COVID, and we have to deal with life as it is, not as we wish it could be. And so there are times in our lives where the picture that we had of how life was, our carefully planned reality, gets absolutely smashed to smithereens. And you can't fix that. You have to actually move forward, ultimately, having gone through a lot of the trauma and the emotions related to trauma and lots of time. You move forward and you start building a new life for yourself using these new ingredients that you've been given. And it's really not easy. I get that. It's so not easy, but there are choices involved. And while I believe control is an illusion, that's probably one of the biggest lessons I learned through my husband's death, is that I thought I was in control of my life. Control is really an illusion, but we do hold the power to choose in any given moment, in any given situation. And we can choose to be buried as victims of circumstance, or we can choose to be broken open and planted like a seed. And that really is where we all find ourselves at the moment. No matter what kind of loss we are experiencing as individuals, we are all sitting in a place where we have the power to choose how we move forward.
So thank you for that. And I just want to stay on this topic as well, because somebody who's changed, I mean, your status has changed from happily married with this family unit, and like you say, in 6 minutes you've got a title as a widow, and you said you can't unwidow yourself. You can unfriend yourself, block somebody out, but you can't change the reality of that status, and you have to make this choice. I offer bereavement counseling as well, because under Islamic rights, when you bury somebody, you have to enshroud them, bathe them and enshroud them in that. So I'm one of those volunteers that do that. But moreover, thereafter, I offer bereavement support and counsel to the families. And that includes many widows who now we term COVID widows. And also, COVID has changed how we mourn, how we actually conduct our funeral rites. So I've noticed those rituals and rites were part of your closure. And many widows no longer had that. They don't have the support of the family during your period of mourning. So uh, when you lose a loved one, it's a feeling of isolation. And then your isolation intensifies because there was no physical comfort and support, just somebody to hold you and hug you, just that silent support. So widows no longer had that support. So the grieving process was extended in terms of the acceptance of the death, also was extended in that way. And hence, that's why I'm so glad you're speaking about this and speaking out to those that are widows. But something you mentioned in the conversation on Wednesday, you said a list about collateral damage and collateral beauty. And I think for me, that is a very healing process. And I think that is a good process to actually kickstart your acceptance, your healing, and ultimately to make the choice to take an alternate path or an alternate journey. So can you please just explain to all those who have experienced loss out there, whether you're a widow, you've lost a loved one, a parent, or that, about making a list about this collateral damage and collateral beauty?
Sure. So, Mariam, about 9 months after my husband's death, having gone through, felt like a washing machine. Some days I didn't even know what my name was, let alone the day of the week. I got to a place where I was asked to actually give a presentation about what had happened to us. And it was called 6 Minutes That Changed My Life. And it was a Women's Day presentation. And they wanted to obviously know, how did I get back up again? Because when you become a sole breadwinner, then there's no way that I could just say, well, I'm not working until I feel better. I had to go back to work. And I had to do what I do. And it hasn't been easy, but work has been my sanity. And I got quite angry when I was putting this presentation together. I was sitting in bed on a Sunday morning thinking, what am I going to talk to this audience about? And I folded a piece of paper in half and I wrote collateral damage on the one side, collateral beauty on the other. And I started with the damage side because I was so angry at that point still. And I wrote down everything I could think of. My husband's death. I'd lost my husband. My children had lost their father. I'd lost the future co-grandparent of my grandchildren. We lost our home as well. We could never go back to our home because my youngest son could never sleep in our home again. And I wrote down all the negative emotions and anything that had happened that was negative. And there was a lot, because the weirdest thing is that when something like what I went through happens, when there's a lot of trauma, there seems to be a lot of things go wrong around that trauma, from gate motors being struck by lightning to boreholes exploding, etc. It just happened. Both my children had car accidents, nothing serious, thank goodness. And I wrote and I wrote and I wrote for 2.5 pages until I couldn't write any more. And then I thought, well, I'm sure there's at least 10 things I can write down on the collateral beauty side. And I started to write, and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. And I completely blew myself away. In 9 months, I was able to write 5 pages of collateral beauty, which was twice as many items as the collateral damage. And that really was and is, for our listeners, an exercise in perspective. So if we can look at things with perspective, and this is not the sort of thing you're going to do within the first few weeks of losing a loved one, but it's something you can do down the line. And I've even done it for COVID. And many people in my audiences have done it for COVID for themselves. And what it makes you do is it makes you look for the possibilities and the opportunities that, and my brother-in-law called them doors and windows in his eulogy at my husband's funeral. He wished for us the blessings of being able to see doors and windows opening that perhaps had never been there before. And I have to say that has become a reality. So once again, it's how are you looking? How are you viewing life? How are you looking at life? If you're looking at life through the lens of punishment as a victim, then that's what you're going to see. If you can take yourself on an adventure. And what was my adventure? My adventure was, who is Nikki without Simon? We'd been together for 28 years, and you start seeing yourself through that person's lens. And it's actually quite interesting when you start seeing yourself through maybe your own lens, and of course, inviting other people into your life in different shapes and forms to be mirrors for you. And so sometimes that means inviting different people in, not just your closest friends and family, but people who don't actually maybe or didn't know you as a couple, didn't know you as part of that family. They see you very differently, and they can reflect you back at yourself. And so you start learning about yourself in different dimensions, which probably has been the most scary yet exhilarating adventure of my life.
So, Nikki, can we please take a short break, and then I'd like to focus on the parenting part in the work-life integration. So if we can just take a short break, we'll be back after the break.
Is it our range of exclusive, high-end, luxurious jewellery? Or is it our master craftsmanship of all your bespoke jewellery needs? We believe it's because at Randery Jewellers, we know just how to make your special moments last forever. Whether it's for a wedding, anniversary, or just a simple gift to show your love, trust Randery Jewellers to make it special. www.randeryjewellers.com. Make your moments last forever. With Randery Jewellers, a family name you can trust.
Doozy Medicine Depot, retail pharmacy and emergency medical depot, conveniently situated in the Doozy Medical Center, Corner Burger and Russell Street, Pietermaritzburg. We provide safe, affordable and convenient medical facilities, open till 10 p.m. every day of the year. We have a full-house clinic that operates from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m., which is run by a qualified sister. The clinic offers immunization, vaccination, wellness, general consultation, and more. Call Doozy Medicine Depot on 033 3421 200. Doozy Medicine Depot, your pharmacy of choice.
A strip of land with over 2 million people blockaded for 13 years. Healthcare is on its knees, food is scarce, and water is inadequate. COVID has wreaked havoc in the lives of the people of Gaza. 53% of the population live below the poverty line. 80% of Gaza relies on external aid to survive. And 20,000 children are now orphans. The future is bleak. Please, don't forget Gaza. Donate now to Islamic Relief.
These days, I'm more health conscious than ever. So tonight, it's stir fry for dinner, cooked in healthy Helios pure sunflower cooking oil. Helios is pure sunflower goodness, packed with omega-6. That's good for your heart, and is approved as part of the Heart and Stroke Foundation eating plan. Dinner's ready! Helios, pure sunflower cooking oil. A healthy family is a happy one.
Reliable access to clean water could save thousands of lives each day. With proper sanitation and easy access to fresh, clean water, communities can flourish. Our Thirst Relief Appeal provides clean water to communities in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East by building deep wells and providing sustainable water and hygiene solutions. A monthly donation of as little as 700 Rand could build a well for a community in need. That's only 23 Rand a day. Donate today. www.pennyappeal.org.za or call 031 11 00 573. Penny Appeal. Small change, big difference.
Rejuvenating media day by day. This is Salam Media.
Welcome back. You're tuned to Mid-Morning Talk with Mariam Mia, and I've got parenting expert and just a guru on life, Nikki Bush, and I'm so pleased to be chatting to her. And now we're going to be focusing, I think, what everybody's comfortable and always stays tuned to, because your word is law, Nikki, when it comes to parenting advice. Often when I'm at dinner parties or with parents, and they'll say, when your name comes, Nikki Bush, it ends conversation. It's be on all and end all. That's like, you know, when you want to go for the jugular, you just quote Nikki. I had Nikki saying this, and nobody dares challenge thereafter. So, Nikki, I mean, I've heard you extensively on radio, in your podcast as well, in being in the field of early childhood development. There was always this prior to COVID, where parents felt, especially working parents, felt that guilt about not spending enough quality time with their children. So they're working hard to pay for the better schools, extramurals. If the children had potential in some sort of cultural or extramural sport, then investing in additional coaching. And that's so we provided financially best opportunities for our children, but everybody then felt, I think, that guilt that we don't spend enough quality time just interacting and having conversations with our children. And then COVID happens, and like you say, for me, that's collateral beauty, because we were having lunches together, uh, learning online in our pajamas and slippers, and we could choose Sunday, Monday, and Friday was every day. And as you've said, you use the term children's lives in action. We were able to have that quality time we so yearned for, as well as I think last year, 2020, as a parent, you actually knew what your children were learning at school, where the strengths are, where the weaknesses are, or if you felt the school was lacking in something, you could pinpoint and tell the principal or the HODs that this is where I see there's lacking, because we were at a point where we could really absorb our children's lives. Tell us a little bit about that, and then what had happened. Then the next part of the question is then the balance sort of wins. So there was no balance between life at work, school, and home life, and I think that became problematic for children, for parents and children, and they were struggling because everybody was in their space and in their face, so to speak. And I think this book speaks to that, boundaries as well as integration about our work life.
Sure. So, Mariam, just to let our listeners know that this book has 5 sections. So, Future Proof Yourself has 5 sections. The first section is Dancing with Disruption, and we've dealt with some of that already. And it's written for busy people, because I know so many people who are going to read this book are also parents and, working. So, if you just read part 1, Dancing with Disruption, in full, which is about 40 pages, then you can literally dip into the rest of the 4 sections. So we've got Working Remotely, which covers, of course, the work from home, school from home scenario. And that's what we're going to talk about now. And then just to add, section 3 is Building Resilience. Section 4 is Leading Yourself. And section 5 is Leading Your Team at Work and at Home. And I think it's probably a good place to start is just to say that I don't believe that we are 2 separate people, one at work and one at home. We are one integrated person. And what COVID has done in sending us home to work is it's actually reinforced that we are one person. And for the first time, many people who had corporate jobs and were away in an office, as you said, got to spend quality time with their children. And I work at all levels of organizations. And I tell you, even at the exco level of some of the large financial institutions, the directors are saying they've never had the opportunity to see their children in action throughout the day. They only used to see them when they put a goodnight kiss on their heads at night, when they got home, probably after their children had dinner. And now you're actually seeing what makes up a child's day. And before COVID, people would come to me and just say, I call it the COVID parenting paradox. Nikki, we wish we had more quality time with our children. And now, by some bizarre twist of fate, a global pandemic comes along and gives you your children 24/7. And then parents come back and say, but now we don't know what to do with our children either. And so we have been out of practice in terms of being with our children 24/7. And this has given us the opportunity. And for some people, it's worked really well and they've loved it. And some families are even looking at educational options now and going, but maybe we're not going to send our kids back to normal school. Maybe we'll do homeschooling, or maybe we'll do a hybrid online situation with a school that, where we don't have to pay for extramural activities and all these extras. We'll just pay for the, the academics, and we'll do the rest ourselves. So what has COVID done? It's opened up many more options for parents. For some parents, they can't wait for their children to go back to school full time. But I think the thing is, we have to be realistic when we do have our children at home. And that is that children are naturally busy. It's not necessarily that they have ADD, but children are naturally busy. And people might just fall off their chairs when I give you this statistic. But children are born with about 1.5 minutes concentration for every year of their life. And at some point, over time, we get them to be able to concentrate for 20 to 30 minutes at a time by the time they hit grade 1. How does that happen? It happens because there's been an adult as part of the process, an adult who's been teaching or playing with the child or playing next to the child or encouraging the child to stick with what they are doing for longer and longer and longer periods of time. So if you're at home with your children and trying to work and you've got a child under the age of 3, you really aren't going to get a lot done without somebody saying "Mummy" or "Daddy." And fortunately, in this side of COVID, we're still able to have assistance at home, which is much easier than when we were in the early stages of lockdown, when you really didn't have anybody at home to help you with your children. So kids are naturally busy. It will be messy. It's not going to be perfect. And we have to go for workable solutions, not perfect solutions. And anybody who has built a business from home knows that if you want to get deep work done, you do it before your children wake up in the morning and you do it after they go to sleep at night. That's when you want to get uninterrupted work done. And at this point, we really need to acknowledge self-care. If you're going to have a much longer day than you used to because you're working either side of your children's waking hours, then if your company is saying, which some large corporates have done, between 12 and 2 is a no meeting zone, we need to try and honor that as much as we can. And that's a time when you might be helping your children, having lunch with your children. You might be, if you are able to have a power nap for 20 minutes to fill your cup again, or maybe do a quick meditation or a prayer session. These things are important because we're not just a brain, we're not just a body. We are multidimensional human beings, and we need to practice self-care. Self-care has become one of those critical things that is contributing to mental wellness, and companies are starting to talk about self-care and burnout. So if you are running a company or running a team, you need to know who's in your team. You need to know how many children they have. You don't just need to know that. You need to know how old those children are. The book obviously details, what to expect depending on what age children you have or your team members have, because we need to be a little bit realistic and empathetic to those who have children, and vice versa. Those who are managing teams with children might not have children themselves. So children are not robots. Neither are you. All human beings are just human beings, and we have our ups and downs and our bad hair days as well. And we cannot just be programmed like computers. So we have to keep the human in the middle. I think that's what's really important, is we need to keep the human in the middle, but be careful. Because while we have to actually acknowledge that our children have lost just like we have, if you had a child under the age of 10, in the past 18 months, they were used to one teacher for everything. And when they came home to be with you, they had that teacher ripped away from them. And they too went through loss and grief and trauma, even though they have you. Remember, they were spending more waking hours with that teacher than they probably were with you if you worked full time. So we have to have empathy for our children, but by the same token, we must not fall into the trap of saying, oh, shame, my poor child's having a terrible childhood because of COVID. Because when you do that, you are falling into the guilt trap. And when you feel guilty, you put your child in the driver's seat. When you put your child in the driver's seat, then all hell breaks loose, because it's not a safe place for them to be. And they start trying to control what's out of control. And they start trying to take over, and then you have a clash, and they really need you to stay in the driver's seat and keep boundaries in place. And one of the fundamental boundaries that helps for family sanity and helps your children feel safe is the good old routine. Routine is a regular wake-up time, regular go-to-bed time. Routine is the order of things that happen in between those bookends of the day. If you get thrown out by 20 minutes because you get caught in traffic, don't go hysterical. Just maintain the order of the way things are going to happen in the day. That's what keeps family sanity going, is the order.
Nikki, Thanks so much for that. Those are true pearls of wisdom and sage advice indeed. So I just like to end off what you said in terms of the style of the book. So please, if you feel, I just don't have time for another book, Nikki understood that, and that's why she wrote the book in a style that's, I think, you know what, when I think of it, when I needed to get my son, I had two girls who were avid readers. And then my son, he just couldn't read anything. He needed something funny. And then I put him onto the Diary of a Wimpy Kid. And he says, Mommy, but this is so fun. This is not a book just with words. And I think, Nikki, maybe subconsciously you were thinking that everybody's so overwhelmed. So we need to write this in a style of a diary of a Wimpy Kid. So, I mean, you've laid it out. That's really easy reading. And yes, so they say the style of the writing is chicken soup for the soul. So you just know it's going to be comfort reading. It's going to be Nikki speaking to you. So basically in conversation with Nikki. So please, if you want an easy read, a read that's going to support you as well as ground you, then do get a copy of Nikki's book. It's all over. So if you just Google future proof for yourself, how to win at work and life. Yes, you're going to see pop out at various online stores. As I've had the experience, I just saw, sure. So it's already out everywhere. I mean, you don't even have to go out and buy it. You can purchase it online, but a really worthwhile read. And as you've said, you've handled yourself in terms of being a widow when you're in trauma, your child, yourself as a parent, and then there are many other sections. So 5 easy sections. Thanks so much. Looking forward to chatting to you. I think we need to connect now and then, just for that sage advice. And also life has changed and altered, but yes, the way we parent, as you've said, routine and structure is what children thrive on. So please create. So you have to create a new routine, then sit down and have a discussion and conversation and create a routine and structure. Let your children be part of that conversation. And yes, enjoy the journey of life, because it's exciting to take. I think this is just taken the path that's not taken and the road that's not taken. And COVID gives us that opportunity to be far away from the madding crowd. So embrace it. And life is that mystery box of MasterChef or Chop, whichever is your preference. Thanks so much, Nikki, for your time. And really enjoyed this conversation.
Thanks, Mariam. And maybe just to leave our listeners with one last pearl of wisdom, may your curiosity always be stronger than your fear. And you can get hold of me at nikkibush.com.
Thanks so much, Nikki. We're going to take a short break, and our last inspirational interview for the afternoon now, coming up shortly.